You are 14 years old. It's a spring morning somewhere in the Roman Empire in the year 50. The sun isn't even up yet, but you are. You've been awake for hours, because today is your wedding day. Not a wedding you planned, not a wedding you asked for. There is no proposal. There is no engagement story. There is no ring you spent 6 months dreaming about. There is just a man your father chose for you. You have met him exactly twice. He is at least a decade older than you. He might be a lot older than that. And in a few hours, in front of your entire family and your whole village, you're going to become his wife. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Nobody in that crowd thinks anything is wrong. Not your mother, not the priest, not the neighbors. Nobody whispers. Nobody objects. To every single person in that room, this is just Tuesday. So what is going on here? Why did so many ancient humans get married at ages that today would land somebody in prison? 14, 12, sometimes even younger. Were they monsters? Were they desperate? Or is the real answer far stranger and far more human than any of us want to admit? Because the story you have heard, the one about everyone dropping dead at 30, is flat out wrong. And the real answer is hiding in a place nobody thought to look, carved into 20,000 Roman tombstones. Let's open the file. Here is the story everyone repeats. You've heard it in school. You've heard it in movies. Life expectancy in the ancient world was about 30 years. So people married as children because the clock was ticking from the day they were born. And the logic sounds airtight. Married at 14, parents at 16, grandparents at 32, dead at 35. A whole life compressed in half, so you had better start early. There's just one problem with this beautiful theory. It is completely mathematically false. Life expectancy is an average. In the ancient world, that average was crushed by one brutal, heartbreaking number, the babies. Roughly one newborn in 3 never saw their first birthday. Not 1 in 100, 1 in 3. Nearly half of all children were gone before their 10th birthday. Every single family buried children. The emperor's family, the baker's family, the blacksmith's family. There was no vaccine, no antibiotics, no clean water. Childhood was a gauntlet. Now watch what that does to the math. One baby dies at age 1. Her sister lives to 59. Average those 2 lives and you get 30. 30 is not how long people lived. 30 is what mass infant death does to a spreadsheet. Because if you survived childhood, the ancient world suddenly looked very different. A Roman who made it to 20 could reasonably expect to live on into their 50s or 60s. Gray hair was not a miracle. Grandparents were not unicorns. Old people were everywhere. Cicero was 63 when they finally had to execute him to stop him talking. Plato made it to about 80. Ramses II ruled Egypt into his 90s and outlived 12 of his own heirs. The 30-year lifespan is a myth, which means the whole running out of time theory just collapsed. In the 1980s, 2 historians, Richard Saller and Brent Shaw, decided to find out. Forget the poets. Forget the emperors. They went after the one source that never lies about family, the tombstones. They collected the gravestones of ordinary Romans, thousands upon thousands of them from all over the empire. Bakers, soldiers, shopkeepers, freed slaves, not the famous 1%. The people history usually forgets completely, because every Roman tombstone records who paid for it. A husband for his dearest wife, a father for his sweetest daughter. Each stone is a tiny frozen photograph of one family at one moment in one small Roman town. And hidden inside those stones was a pattern. When a woman died young, her father set up the stone. When she died older, her husband did. Find an age where fathers hand over to husbands, and you have found the age when Roman women actually married. The result shocked everyone. Ordinary Roman women did not marry at 12. They married in their late teens, some around 20. And ordinary Roman men married even later, usually close to 30. A baker's son had to build a whole life before he could afford a wife. So where does the 14-year-old bride come from? She was real, very real, but she lived in one very specific place, at the top of society. The rich, the powerful, the famous, the 1% of the 1%. Roman law set the minimum age of marriage at 12 for girls and 14 for boys. No sanctions if you bent it. And the elite treated that law like a business deadline. Cicero's own daughter Tullia was betrothed as a child and married in her mid-teens. The higher the family, the younger the bride. The Roman writer Pliny even praised a friend's daughter who died just before her wedding day. She was around 13, and in his letter, the tragedy is her death, not her age. Her age was normal for his world. Why? Because for the Roman elite, a marriage was never about love. Love was a bonus. Sometimes it grew later. Sometimes it didn't. A marriage was a merger. Two companies joining forces. And the bride was the signature on the contract. In that world, an elite daughter was not treated as a person with her own future. She was an asset on the family balance sheet, a bridge between two fortunes. And assets do not get to say no. Marry her to a senator, and your family gains votes in the forum. Marry her to a general, and your family gains an army at its back. Marry her to a banker, and your debts quietly disappear. But wait too long, and the other families close their deals first. Even the state pushed in the same direction. The Emperor Augustus passed laws that rewarded citizens for marrying and having children early, and punished the ones who stayed single. Empty cradles scared Rome more than enemy armies. That is the real reason elite girls married at 12 or 14. Not because everyone was about to die, because the alliance market was fast, the state was pushing, and their fathers were playing to win. And underneath the politics, there was a second engine, colder than the first one: inheritance, property, blood, and a very old, very ugly question. How does a rich man make absolutely sure that the heir to his fortune is really his? A very young bride meant more childbearing years, more chances at a male heir, and above all, certainty. Certainty about whose blood the children carried. Property flowed through blood, and the men who owned the property wanted total control of that flow. The dowry sealed it. Money, land, and slaves moving from her father's house to her husband's. Negotiated like a treaty. Signed, witnessed, archived. Strip away the flowers and the feast, and a Roman elite wedding was a contract with a party attached. And if you're thinking this sounds less like a love story and more like a business transaction, you're not being cynical. You are simply reading the sources correctly. But here is where the story takes its first truly strange turn. Because this whole system, the child brides, the alliances, the dowries, was not universal at all. Travel a few centuries forward and a little to the north, and the pattern flips completely upside down. In England, in the Netherlands, in Scandinavia, historians dug into centuries of parish marriage records. Dusty books listing every wedding in every village. And they found something that makes no sense at first. Women there married at 24, 25, 26 years old. Demographers even drew a line across the map of Europe, from Trieste in Italy up to St. Petersburg in Russia. They call it the Hajnal line. West of that line, brides in their mid-20s. East of it, brides in their teens. Same continent, opposite worlds. So what was different in the West? Not religion, not biology, money. In northwestern Europe, young people left home in their teens and worked for wages for years. As farm servants, as maids, as apprentices, saving, coin by coin, season after season. Because in that world, you did not marry until you could afford your own household, your own roof, your own fire, your own bed, not a corner of your father's house. And saving for that took a decade. So couples married late as established adults. And here's the number that breaks every assumption. Up to 1 in 5 women, they're never married at all. In elite Rome, an unmarried adult daughter was a family emergency. In 17th century Amsterdam, she had a job, she had savings, and she was completely unremarkable. She was just Tuesday. Which means the age of marriage was never really set by biology, or by death, or by human nature. It was set by economics. Change how wealth moves through a society, and the age of the bride moves with it. And that idea leads us to the final, strangest question of all. Was the child bride ever natural at all? To answer that, you have to go back before Rome, before the pharaohs, before farms, back to the way humans lived for 300,000 years, hunting, gathering, and owning almost nothing. Anthropologists who lived with the world's last foraging peoples report a striking pattern. In many of these societies, first marriages typically involve young women, not children, late teens, early 20s, and crucially, a bad marriage is not a life sentence. You can simply walk away from it. Why the difference? Think about what a forger owns. No land, no herds, no vault of silver. There is nothing to inherit, so there is no dynasty to protect and no reason to lock down a child's future in a contract. Marriage is a partnership, not a transfer of property. Then, roughly 10,000 years ago, humans invented farming. And with farming came land. And with land came inheritance. And with inheritance came that terrifying question we met earlier. Who gets it? Some historians argue the child bride was born right there in the first wheat fields. Not in our nature. In our contracts. The 14-year-old bride was never what humans are. She was what property does. So the next time someone tells you that ancient people married at 14 because everyone died at 30, you will know the truth is darker and much more interesting. They did not marry young because life was short. They married young because someone, somewhere was doing the math. And that math still echoes today. The average first-time bride in the West is now around 28 years old. Not because we live so much longer, because, finally, most of us own our own lives. Tomorrow's file is even stranger. The ancient world had almost no word for the color blue. Homer looked at the Mediterranean and called it wine dark. And some scientists argue ancient people could not truly see blue at all. Could you see a color you cannot name? Subscribe and find out tomorrow.